Hi, I'm Dick Miller, and today I'm meeting with my good friend Senator Jeff Smith. As most of you may know, we try to do this fairly regularly, and it's regular this month.
Yeah, it's a regular month. We try to get caught up.
It was a little cold this morning, and Jeff tells me that it's going to get better.
It has to. We're going to head towards spring now.
The days are getting longer. It is improving. You know, before we start, I'd like to plug something, if you don't mind. On February 15th, we are going to have primaries here, and this is for the spring election, as I'm sure you're familiar with. And I think it was Tip O'Neill who said, "All politics is local." Was it Tip O'Neill?
I think it was.
We'll give him credit for it. And there's a lot of truth in that, isn't there?
It sure is. It's where you really are affected close to home, yeah.
And you have more of a voice because you're close to the meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have, I'm going to miss some, I'm sure. Maybe you can tell me if I'm missing some people. We have city, government, council people, county board members, school board members, and I'm not sure about the township.
So it may depend on the town you're in, yeah.
Okay, So this is coming up on the 15th of February. Obviously, if you aren't registered to vote, you need to get a hold of your city, county clerk, or whoever, and get the job done.
Yeah, and oftentimes there's going to be referendum questions and other important things that you should have your voice heard.
Good. So before we leave today, I'll probably remind all of you to make sure you make it to the primaries to vote.
And while we're making announcements, before we get into some of these other things, I want to remind people this was Flood Awareness Week coming up. But who knows when you'll hear this. You might hear it during the week, after that week. But it's important right now to be thinking about flooding because it's inevitable. In some places, depending, right now we don't have much snow, but we don't know. We might have another foot of snow before the end of this, and then it melts quickly, and we have flooding in the spring. And we know that's been a problem over the years. 1 inch, I've got a couple of statistics. 1 inch of water can cause up to $25,000 in damage to a home if you get that much water into your home. And so you need to be aware of that. You need to be checking your own policies if you have possibility you be flooded, because you're not necessarily automatically have flood insurance. So I think it's something that you need to be aware of.
Yeah, and as you probably all of you know, once the ground's frozen, and if that water goes if the snow goes fast, it has to go somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
So it goes in the rivers, and the rivers come up, and then suddenly you have problems. Thank you for reminding us of that. Most of us don't think too much about it until it's right at our door.
Until it's too late. Yeah.
So, good. Well, we'll move into some of the things that are going on. I noticed listening to the news the other day that they're projecting roughly $3.8 billion surplus, tax revenue surplus, and lots of people are talking about how to spend it.
Yeah, $3.8 billion. That is a lot of money, and the governor came out and proposed after a couple days of contemplation that $150 per person would be something that might be helpful to some people, whether you agree or not. That seems to be a common thing actually that the Republican majority usually would introduce and do. So I think he thought, well, here's something we can agree on. And then 700, and I don't remember now the exact number, but over $700 million to go into schools, because the fact is we have cut and underfunded schools for a long time. It's why we see so many referendums. This is your money that has been invested into Wisconsin and which should be returned back to your communities in the way you expect it to be for what you feel is important.
Well, and I think the governor's budget was cut significantly in the area of education. Well, amongst other areas.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting is the criticism from the Republicans in terms of this being a political ploy, this $150 suggestion. And if I remember, it hasn't been too many years ago, a Republican governor gave back, what, $75?
It's exactly, yeah, did the same thing, right? It was okay then. I wouldn't argue that there's politics involved. I get that. But I think it was a case of the governor thought, well, this is something we can do together, and following their lead that they've done this before. But instead, the Republicans have said they're going to sit on that money. They're going to sit on that money until they think they have they can get a Republican governor. So your money is going to be sitting there, not being moved into your community and back to you because of politics, if you want to talk about a political move.
Well, you know, one of the things that when I was on the county board, I continually was concerned with is having a rainy day fund, and knowing that things would go south, so to speak, the county could be in a position to have to borrow money just to survive. And I pulled up something on the web. It indicated, this was from the bond buyer something or other, and they were suggesting that the state right now has $1.73 billion in a rainy day fund. What approximately is the budget for the state? Annual, is it based on an annual budget or a biennial?
Biennial. So it's 80 billion, something in that area right now. Yep.
So we're looking at 2.5%. 1.73 is less than 2.5%. I guess it would be my suggestion that it would be good to have some discussion of maybe bumping that up a little bit, with part of that anyway. And you just you don't know. You just don't know. And it's too bad. And we hear the county don't do a good job of it. Unless I haven't been on the board for 4 years, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But it seems like we don't do a good job of setting what we want to maintain as a healthy rainy day fund, and then try not to exceed that. You know, again, use that money as needed.
I've always found, especially local politics, school boards, so school districts, county government, and others have had rainy day funds, and then have the politics of it's like a tug of war. You know, you have groups who say, "What are you doing? What's that money for?" You know, they get suspicious that money's being used for, you know, I don't know what they think it's being used for, but they don't like having rainy day funds, which I think is really impractical to think that way. But that's that politics, and I know that the pressure is on local officials all the time about spending down that rainy day fund, and so it's a tough call sometimes, I know, for local government.
But it's, you know, it would seem like it would be a conservative sort of thought, but
save, right? Savings.
Safe, and being safe.
Being prepared.
Because obviously, if the state makes a commitment to, say, shared revenue,
that's right. That's a really good example. And then the economy tanks. You still need to fulfill that promise, because it's in statutes, and that means bonding. That means borrowing instead of having that money there that we could have had.
What are some of the other projects that could be funded? Let me start with this comment. When you have a surplus, it's nice not to necessarily put that into long-term programming, but infrastructure, because you know that expenditure isn't every year. It varies from year to year.
And we know that, you know, it's in the news now with the federal government having passed, with Joe Biden and the Congress having passed a huge infrastructure bill, which we just saw a bridge collapse in Pittsburgh, and we've seen it. How many years ago that happened, and everybody was shocked over the Mississippi River in Minnesota. I mean, there are definitely, I can't remember the numbers of bridges in each state that have now hit a point where they need to be replaced or upgraded. It's thousands. We're talking tens of thousands, even in Wisconsin, right? And of course the roads. And talk about an investment. We know for a fact they last 50 years or more. So that's a pretty good investment that get people to work, get people where they want to go, and it's your money at work.
Yeah, yeah. And we all benefit to a certain degree when
Yeah.
we go into infrastructure like roads.
Jobs
Yeah,
are grow from that.
yeah. And we know our roads are in tough shape.
Yeah, they are.
I think there's money that has come in from the federal government for this. I think they're starting to. Well, I shouldn't say that. I know here in the county, the highway department has been setting aside priorities and laying out some roads that need serious work as soon as possible, so that when federal money does make itself available,
Yeah.
they can start these projects, almost immediately. And I'm sure Eau Claire County is doing the same thing.
I know, that's something, a very good example of how local is better and local works for us. So our counties, I have 7 counties in my district, and they all are well prepared. They know where that money needs to, they know which roads need to be fixed and which bridges, and they prioritize them in the townships too, right? The towns, their budgets are probably 3/4 or more, 80% of their budget is for their roads. So it's essentially the whole budget,
Yeah, yeah.
and they can't keep up.
I think going back to what we're talking about in terms of this alleged surplus money that may be sitting there at the end of the biennium, in a way it would be nice if the state would think about some of those priorities and where some of this money needs to go. Giving it back isn't going to repair the roads and the bridges.
That's right. That's true.
It sets us back another several years.
Yeah, and we've made that argument before, but it hasn't stopped.
Sending it back.
Yeah.
We all want our money.
I totally agree with you, though, Dick, on that. We, as taxpayers, we've all invested our money expecting it to be invested back into the community. And
I think once it leaves our billfold.
And I shouldn't make this statement, but the truth is, because we can measure that. Actually, we can measure. A dollar invested into kids, for instance, comes back to $7. I've seen that statistic, right? So when you think about it that way, and $150, it might be your 1 week of groceries or something. It's, what can I say?
Yeah.
We're all just trying to get along down in Madison and come to places where we think we can agree.
Yes. Now, bring us up to date on where things are at in the Senate.
So in the Senate, I piled on committee hearings and meetings right now. It's all this big rush at the end to pass bills and to throw stuff out there. And I'm going to be really frank with you. The bills that are being introduced at this stage are all political. All for making headlines, for setting up for the campaign, what they want to talk about, because they aren't. We've had great legislation and bills suggested by our constituents, by whether it be people like you, county board people, city, town, government, schools, health industry these days with COVID and all those things. And for some reason, here we are 2 years later, still with these bills languishing, or the ideas not even being introduced as bills or ignored. And then here we are, and seriously, we are getting bombarded right now with bill after bill after bill after bill introduction that is getting a hearing. I got hearings on Monday, and I had hearings this week in different committees, and they're going to be introduced on the floor the next week.
That quickly.
So anytime you get a legislator during this campaign, when you say, hey, why didn't this get done? There was a certain bill I really was interested in, and why didn't it get passed? And they say, oh, we ran out of time. Never let them get away with that. Never let them get away with that. There's bills introduced last week that are getting votes next week, right now. And it's only about politics. Nothing about how we should be addressing the child care issue, our economy, helping businesses, helping farmers, None of those things are even on leadership in the legislature. It's on their mind. Right now, it's only about how they get people elected. I'm being critical, I know, but it upsets me.
We're at a time in our lives, I think, where government is there, but it's really not functioning particularly well for the citizenry. It may be working well for those in power, and you and I have talked about this frustration that has to exist for the minority party. And I'm not completely naive. It may have happened in the past when the Democrats were in power. But, of course, right now the Republicans are in power, and that's creating the frustration that exists amongst those of you who are can't get a bill even to committee.
Yeah.
And I guess, again, my naivety says that you present a bill, you write a bill, it goes to a committee, and if it's not a good bill, the committee has a right to throw it out. But it needs to have a chance to start.
Or amend it.
Or amend it to improve.
And this is a little civics lesson here. So you have a committee hearing, then you have what we call an exec committee after that, which may be a week later or even a few days later. But it's at the exec portion where they vote on that bill in committee, either accept it or reject it, or debate it and amend it. We have run into a rut here of not actually having exec in-person meetings. We'll have in-person hearings because you hear the public input and you get those hearings, but then they have what we call paper ballots. So there's no discussion, no debate, and no chance for amendment for any bills, because the majority party in power right now, they just want to shove through the bills as they have introduced them with no discussion and get them to the floor and pass them as they are. That's the politics we're in. And when you talk about what used to happen, it used to be the other way around. We would actually have good discussion in committees and introduce amendments, and it would come out amended from committee and be a better bill for it, right? Or better in the sense that, the old saying was the best legislation was when nobody was happy because nobody gets 100%. Now it's about either 100% or none.
Downer.
Yeah, well, I want people to know, that's what we're here for, right? So you asked what's going on in the Senate.
And I think I felt the same thing, as you and I have talked over the last several months, that there is this frustration and, you really wonder. And I think what's so frightening about it is one might, I won't say you do, Jeff, because you're the kind of guy that wants to keep plugging away and try to make things work. But it would frustrate some people to the point where they wouldn't want to run. Good politicians wouldn't want to engage themselves in this frustration.
That's exactly right, as a matter of fact. Funny you'd say that, because we've had some retirements, and I recently talked to somebody that I really feel would be such a asset to the state of Wisconsin if that person were to step up and run. That person said, it's toxic. I do not want to be part of that, and it makes me cry. And this person said it just makes me cry to think about how our government is working right now in Madison. So you're exactly right. It's discouraging to people who would otherwise not only be qualified, but would be a huge asset to the state of Wisconsin.
Well, I remember at one of our first discussions, I don't know whether I brought it up, but I'll take credit for it, that there needs to be somewhat of a balance of opinions, party members within the system. That creates good discussion, debate.
Yeah.
And it isn't, and I think when we have such a almost 2/3, just under 2/3 members of our state legislature are of one party. A few years ago, I sat in on a session, and the majority party didn't even listen to the minority party. I mean, it was just all kinds of talk going on off to one side. There was just no listening, and somehow, I think here at our county board meetings, we demand more respect than that, and courtesy.
Yeah, respect and courtesy.
You know, and it's sad. But
I've heard it from observers before that, they can't believe the disrespect that they
it's just
feel.
somehow there should be this common courtesy, and try to work together, get to know each other. It seems to me that if you know the people across the aisle, you know they've got 2 kids. They like to play golf, or they like to hunt deer. I mean, when you get to know people, you find you have a lot of commonality,
and
don't you?
it makes it a lot harder to be disrespectful and rude.
Yeah. I'm going to move in. We'll move into something else. I'm going to have to get my train of thought working here for me. I think one of the things that I hear frequently, times are tough. Inflation is terrible. Unemployment is high. I don't think that's true, is it?
No, so unemployment, we're at a record low, right?
Do you know
we're at 2.8%
for
in the state of Wisconsin. 2.8%. I mean, we've lived long enough to know that, hey, if you know, we don't worry about it till it gets over 5% or something, you know, because it's generally anyway, we know that number is really low. It's low nationally. People have come back, and this economy has actually taken off in the past year. And people are being paid better because of the competition that there is, the market out there for good employees. We know that. What happens? Why is there such a lack of workforce? There's a lot of reasons. One is daycare. People who are of working age and young families have found that 25% in Wisconsin, 25% of child care facilities closed during the pandemic and haven't reopened. That's a big deal. And they can't find the staff because they're so underpaid, trained, undervalued. Exactly, undervalued, that it's a really difficult place. That's the place I was going to bring up, is where we could, as government, invest and help business. The business world is really concerned about this. I know that for a fact. I'm sitting in on meetings with different county business groups who are trying to figure this out and provide that child care that is necessary. That's huge. That's huge. So a lot of the people are not being able to get back into the workforce for that. The other part, of course, is our baby boomers, who were at that already starting to leave the workforce, and we knew we were in for a serious challenge when we got through the baby boomer generation and all left, because that's going to be a big gap. Well, it was accelerated with the pandemic, and with baby boomers who were 60 or older and thinking, okay, my place closed down, or I'm just going to close up my shop if they owned one already and not start again. All these things happened in that area, that they just retired, and why get started again? They're satisfied doing, and so there's all these different things, and there's more to it than that. But and then inflation. Well, I've been listening to and reading a lot about the economists who believe what's that all about? It's really about the supply chain issue, and so we've got empty shelves, and it's complicated, and we only have a couple minutes left, but it's the supply chain issue, which is also affected by the workforce, by pandemic, and by shipping, and the lack of drivers, all those things. And that has caused a shortage, which has caused an influx in the market, and people are buying, but they don't have it, so the prices go up. Everything's going up. And what was interesting too was that they found that with people at home more during the past 2 years, they were taking on projects at home, and that going to these stores and just buying stuff up, and that caused this shortage as well. And then prices go up because of it's supply and demand, right?
Sure.
So we've had that issue, and I want to remind people one thing: we always measure by gas prices, and this is something that people are always surprised because our memories, we forget. I never forgot. 2008. You know what the price got to be of gas in 2008? Over $4 a gallon, everywhere, including here. And I've had people say, "Oh, I never paid." My father-in-law said that to me, and so I Googled it in front of him, and I said, "Nope. You see, look at that. Look at this chart and what they were in 2008." And so, when we're over $3 a gallon, and I know that it was a shock since it got down to like $1 a gallon during the pandemic, we're probably where we should be, and in reality, we're probably lower than we probably should be when you look at, how many years ago it was higher than that.
Well, I filled up with gas back then in a pickup, in a large tank. It cost $120 to fill it.
Yeah.
And I haven't had to spend that kind of money on a tank for a long time.
No.
I like $2 gas.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. But if you look back when gas was $29.9,
yeah,
the inflation that's taken place, that has not kept up as much as we think it has.
No,
but it hurts. It hurts when you go fill your tank.
Inflation is I guess it just depends on but it's subjective in some ways, how it affects you.
Well, and I have read that our actual availability of money to spend is actually greater even with our inflation. So, and we're getting close to the end already.
We are. We still have.
We've got less than a minute. I was going to ask you something about reapportionment. We haven't heard anything from the Supreme Court yet.
No, they're slow in coming back. They said they'd be done by the end of January, but here we are in February. We have not gotten their decision. I think they're probably having some difficulties themselves in figuring this out.
We are getting to the end here. I would just again remind everybody that February 15th is primary day here in Wisconsin for the spring election. Please vote. Your vote is important, and every vote counts. So please go to the polls. And we wish you well. And
and when you go to the polls, thank those poll workers and thank those clerks because they're doing great work.
They're doing good work. Thank you.